So recently I recorded an episode with my good buddy, Dr. Morales, and we did an episode of his podcast, Identity and Influence, and we talked about Gen Z and why they are having a hard time working. And again, this was just that episode where we talked through some of those things. I'm not a Gen Z expert. I don't claim to be one, but we share our thoughts on Gen Z and leadership. And here's the episode. Hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, Identity and Influence. My name is Mo, and as always, I am sitting here with the man himself, Dr. Lim. Yusita, what's up, dude?
Yes, sir. How are you, Dr. Mo? Always great to be with you, man. Excited to talk about what we have lined up.
Yeah, so we call this one Leadership Lesson 51, and
yes,
we're getting into a new. We haven't even gotten past the first 50 yet, but you sent me an article that you just read or that you just wrote.
Yeah.
And we're calling it Leadership Lesson 51 because now we're just going to talk about the stuff that you are actually writing in real time.
Yeah.
And so this is entitled Why So Many Gen Z Workers Are Getting Fired. Man, I love that. Why don't you tell me what inspired you to talk about this?
So there are several things. You had a episode with Kelly Soifer a couple of months ago, which I listened to, which was pretty awesome. Like there were some really great insights that you guys gave. And then I also listened to a couple episodes that you have with Bailey. So for all you out there listening, you got to go check out the Kelly episode and then check out the show that Mo does with Bailey. She's, a Gen Zer just trying to figure out life and work and that kind of thing. And then for whatever reason, I listened to a podcast last week about some Gen Z stuff, just people trying to describe Gen Z and trying to understand Gen Z. And then this last weekend, I was just scrolling through the reels and I saw, for whatever reason, there's also these like Gen Z get fired and they get terminated and they're having a hard time in the workplace. And I put together some stuff and I thought, well, this is a leadership issue. And I don't know that this is necessarily it is a Gen Z thing, but I think as people that are running organizations that there's a big leadership responsibility here to help them. And so I kind of wanted to chat a little bit about it. So leadership lesson 51. Let's talk about the Gen Zers.
Why are Gen Z workers struggling? And what are some of the factors that are driving higher termination rates when it comes to Gen Zers?
Man, so first of all, I want to say I'm not a Gen Z expert at all. I'm not a mental health practitioner or I'm not a therapist or any of that. I just read some stuff. I have my research area that I look at and then, I just look at the trends, check out the research. I think there's so many factors. When you had your episode with Kelly, she just mentioned all of these huge life things that these Gen Zers went through. They've had their digital netizens, they've had computers, and they've been on screens for pretty much all of their lives. They went through 9/11 when they were younger. They went through so many financial issues and financial crashes in the last couple of years, just kind of up and down with finances, up and down in politics, like they are living their lives online, right? And so because of that perceived anonymity of being online, and this is some of the stuff that I've researched in my dissertation research, or doctoral research, because there's the asynchronous, perceived anonymity that you have online, you can't ever be real with people because you're just kind of doing, a curated fake version of yourself online. And you're not really interacting with people face to face. And then these Gen Zers go to work and they're interacting with people face to face. And, they're bringing their online personas, their online, proclivities and their online personalities into real time, real world face to face interactions. And it doesn't quite translate. And so I think one other huge factor that people are just starting to research is the impact that COVID had in the development professionally and personally, basically a bunch of 20-year-olds now that, that basically like stopped life for about a year and a half, 2 years, right? They're seeing it in higher ed, and we both have had higher ed experiences. They're seeing in higher ed that students are showing up less prepared, but because they had that almost 2 years of online, like not face to face kind of education, like that kind of has stunted the development professionally and personally of a lot of, 20-year-olds. And so I think it'll be 10 years before we fully realize and research the effects of, you know, putting a pause on our educational professional development. But people are starting to see there's a huge need because I'm finding that a lot of college grads didn't get their classes or didn't get their work done. And so there's like a year deficit of like, where are all these people? Like, basically, they didn't do anything. And so, like, I know in the area of special ed, there's huge need for special ed teachers because they basically lost a year. If you think about it, all of education lost a year. And so, like, there's this huge gap and this huge need that need to be filled. And so, I mean, there are just so many factors.
With all of these factors that are impacting Gen Z and the way that they develop, what strategies do you think can help Gen Z young people manage mental health challenges in high pressure environments?
I think there's two sides to that thing. On on the side of the Gen Zers, they have more categories and they have an awareness of mental health issues. They have the categories to kind of process through what that looks like. And then I think for those that are older, we have, I think, a responsibility to also understand that they have those categories and they just have these categories explaining and talking about like how they're feeling and what they're going through. And I mean, it's easy for me to pick on it. It's easy for me to just say like, well, when I was younger, yeah, we didn't have those categories. So like we didn't necessarily pick that. And so I think the onus is on the leader's responsibility. If we're talking about leadership here, like I think leadership is responsible for trying to figure this thing out. If they don't, they may have categories for mental health, but as the leader, like I get making fun of them for not understanding, but you're the leader. Do the work as the leader to help them to develop the strategies that it takes to work in whatever environment that they're working in.
You talk in this article about unrealistic job expectations by Gen Zers. If many Gen Z employees are entering the workforce with high expectations like rapid promotions, flexible work setups, being able to work from home, coming in when they want to, all of the funny memes that we see online. Dr. Lim, what do you think those expectations are, and how realistic are these expectations that Gen Zers have coming into the workforce today?
So the way that I want to answer that question is I've had these conversations with Gen. They have grown up seeing these influencers make it big, right? And it isn't necessarily I want to become a lawyer or I want to become a doctor or I want to become a professional. Like that's just not in their minds. I think it's I want to be an influencer. And I see this influencer, they didn't go to college and they travel the world and they make videos and they do all of these fun things. It's really interesting to listen to 20-year-olds think that they don't have to work and that if they just keep posting that they're going to make it big and they're going to go to, Indonesia or whatever and just have like this amazing. And it's crazy. Like I have, students that I've worked with in some of my college programs that have gotten several 100,000 followers and they have gone to Indonesia and they shoot trips to Hawaii. So there are a handful of them that I've worked with that kind of make work. So like I see their pictures, they're going off to Hawaii, they're doing surf photography. And the cool thing is there is this opportunity for you to not necessarily go to college and still make it as a photographer or as an influencer. There is that opportunity. Sadly, that I think a lot of people think that they can all do this and it takes quite a bit of work to do this. Like, cause the guys that I know that are traveling and doing photography, doing this stuff on social media, they're working. They're working really hard. And so I think that's the misunderstanding there. one, that they're able to see their peers go off and do these amazing things, and seemingly it doesn't look like work. But like when you talk to the people that make it, like there's a whole lot of work that they have to do. They have to meet deadlines, and there's responsibilities there that, like, I think is just incumbent on anyone growing up. So whether you choose a traditional, I'm going to work and I'm going to pay my dues, move up in a company, or you go try to be an influencer, like, it both takes work. And I think the misunderstanding is, like, you do this one thing that isn't work, and it's not going to take work, but it's really a lot of work. So I think they've had examples, and like you talk to them, man, they know all the influencers. They listen to this stuff. They watch them on YouTube. They follow them, and then you watch their stuff, and they're trying to do the same things, but you know, just not with the same effect. So I think the unrealistic expectations are that I don't have to work in order to move up in this world, and you know, like we were talking about in the last podcast, have the self leadership to get out of bed and get to work. Like, so I think the misunderstanding is that I don't have to work really hard, but when you get into it, like, it's hard work, whether you do something traditional at a company or you do something non-traditional, like becoming an influence, both take work.
Well, you know, my favorite quote, hard work wins.
Yes.
Nothing can replace hard work. Angela
Oh,
Duckworth talks about
great.
talent counting
Yeah.
once,
Yeah.
hard work counts twice.
Yeah.
And so you could have all the talent in the world, but if you don't work hard, it's not going to pay off. And you're right. The young people that are becoming online successes, they work hard. And the more success you have, the harder you have to work, because once you get there,
Exactly.
how do you stay there?
Yeah. You got to work to maintain it or grow.
But let's bring it back down to the regular everyday worker like you or me, and for these
Yeah.
young people. You write about declining work ethic in workplace engagement, and I'm reading something you wrote right here on Resume Builder. There was a survey that found that 74% of managers say that Gen Z is the most difficult generation to work with because they have poor communication skills, lack of motivation, resistance to traditional workplace norms. How is there a work-life balance for these young people? And is it fair for me to say hard work wins, nobody cares, just work harder? Or am I missing something? How do I help
Yeah.
my employees find a work-life balance?
So when you take a look at, like, the thing that I don't like about, like, the Gen Z culture perspective is it paints like this really awful picture of Gen Zers. You know what I mean? And I always come back to, for me, I come back to developmental psychology. And developmental psychology is the same no matter what the generation. And so I tend to work with Gen Zers in light of their development and where they are in their development. So when you're doing that, you're not distracted by Gen Z can't work or Gen Z can't communicate or whatever. Like, okay, great. Like, that gives me context for things, but developmental psychology does not change. It doesn't matter what generation. Every generation had to go through developmental psychology. That's a process that's in place that, like, never changes. And so it's, when you come back to that, then what it is taking someone that's Gen Z that has all of these characteristics and then going back into developmental psychology. What drives them? What is their personality? What are their goals? If they don't have goals, let me help you write goals. That's why we talk about journaling. It's why we talk about coaching. At the end of the day, it's about it's about referent power. Being in relationship with them, talking to them, talking through their goals and their values and their aspirations, and then modeling it for them and then showing them how to do the work. Like, it's easy for me to look at them and say, well, they don't know how to do this, but it's my job as a leader to walk them through the process of learning how to do this. You don't know how to set a goal? Let me help you set a goal. You don't know what your values are? Well, let's talk through what are your values. Let's write them down. Let's journal them. Let's evaluate and reflect. It's walking. I mean, it's all these really simple things that we've been talking about for the last couple of months, and just walking a Gen Zer through what are your values. I've seen you do that with Bailey. He'll ask a question And then you just walk her through the thought process. And at the end, she's like, I get it. Because what you did was you took the question that she was asking and you related it back to the way that she thought about things. And you have relational equity with her that you can talk to her about. Well, when you were, you know, senior in college, this is how you're processing. And I'm able to see you grow and develop in this way. This is where you're at. Let me help you get to where you want to be. It's a relationship at the end.
Just like everything else in leadership, it always comes back to relationships. And you're right. I think one of the best things that we have as athletic coaches is we're actually in front of people. You have to be there. You're on the field, you're on deck, you're on the court, wherever you're at. And so I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about communication and soft skills, which you talk about in your article. And you mentioned that a lot of employers are citing that there's difficulties in receiving constructive criticism by Gen Z, dealing with authority figures, handling workplace expectations with maturity. What do you think causes that?
I think as a leader, older leaders have expectations of, well, this is when I was growing up, this is where I was at, so I expect you to be here. And again, I want to come back to leaders' responsibilities to help their team members, those that are working for them, these Gen Zers to really step it up. And it's easy to just pick on them, and it takes a little bit more work to work with them, right? And so just think about developmentals. They may not be where you're at developmentally when you enter the workplace. And so you got to help them step up their game. And instead of saying that they don't know how to communicate, teach it to them, walk them through it. Like that has to be a part of the development plan. You're not just teaching the actual job that they enter into, but teaching communication and soft skills has to be a part of their development. And so conflict resolution, constructive feedback, but communicate it. If you're the leader, communicate it in a way that they understand it, right? Because typically we're set in our ways as well. This is the way that I communicate. This is the way that I'm going to communicate feedback. And if they're not receiving it in their way, then that's your responsibility. I'm always going to put the responsibility on the leader. They didn't get it. That's your fault. So figure that out. Figure out a way to communicate to that Gen Zer and do the work. Does that make sense? Just like pick on them. Gen Zer.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's too many leaders who are trying to put the blame on others. And like we say every time, when you put the blame on somebody else, you're not the leader. And so what I hear you saying is leaders, stop complaining about what your people are doing wrong or why they're not motivated, and go and do what you have to motivate them.
Right. Right. And that's why we're having this conversation in a leadership podcast. Like the responsibility is the leader. And Gen Zers are going to come the way that they're going to come. And I don't know that we can change that, but we can help them get better for sure as leaders.
Make no mistake, we're not doing this episode to talk bad about Gen Z. We're doing this episode to show employers and leaders and managers that it's your fault.
Yes.
It's always your fault. Whether it's Gen Z or it's the millennial generation or Gen X, it doesn't matter. Right. If you're the leader and your people are doing something wrong, you're the problem. It's not your people. So I talk to so many young people like Bailey, and they are sick and tired of people telling them that they don't know how to be motivated. They want to be led. People want good leadership. I want good leadership. Right. I want men and women who are going to help me get better. So leaders, listen to what Dr. Lim's saying. And when you read this article, realize it's not your people that's the problem. You are the problem. Right. You're always the problem if you're the leader. And if you don't want to be the problem, then don't be the leader.
Right. When I read through these articles this last week, it definitely blamed Gen Z for not being ready, for not being prepared. They don't have enough grit. They don't have whatever. I'm like, yeah, I get that. So what are you going to do as the leader to help them develop? And sometimes it's going to be hard, but I think once you understand that as a leader, it's your responsibility to help them get there, it changes the game a little bit. And you're not blaming them. You take the responsibility for them not doing their thing. And all these articles are like, well, the easiest thing to do is just fire them because you're not working hard. Well, that's your fault.
Right. Yeah, just like Jim Collins says, there are times when you need to remove somebody from the bus. There are times when somebody needs to get fired. But
Sure.
my question always to a leader, manager, a CEO, whoever that says, oh, I had to fire that guy, I always ask, did you give that person, did you give her the benefit of the doubt? Did you do everything that you possibly could before you fired them and removed them from the team? Or are you
Yep.
just a lazy leader? And I would
Right.
say a majority of the time, at least 50% plus
Right.
one, people are not helping their people. And
Sure.
so I guess one more funny story. My staff makes fun of me because, of course, I'm the old guy and I deal with a lot of young people and they're all 18, 19, 20. And one of the favorite things that I like to rib them about is I'll start out by saying, the problem with your generation, and then they'll just joke and they'll laugh. And one of my Gen Zers, one of my young people, said to me one time, and she totally had this in the holster waiting, we might be screwed up, but it's your generation's fault. And I said, that is absolutely true.
100%.
It's the people that have come before. We are responsible. So if you're an old person out there like me, like Dr. Lem,
Yeah.
give somebody a reason to follow you. If you're a young
Right.
person out there and you're leading and people aren't doing what you want to do, give people a reason to follow you. Dr. Lim,
Absolutely.
I want to shift
Yeah.
to one more topic. Gen Z employees are changing jobs at a rate of 134% higher than before the pandemic. Is that true?
Check this out. This generation grew up with a restart button. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Playing their games, they get to a point, I can restart, I can regenerate, I can move on to the next thing. There is, again, that's our responsibility. We gotta make it enticing. We gotta make it fun. We gotta make it worth their time to stay. If they're not staying, they're gonna find an alternative. They're gonna find some other venue to get stuff done because they can do that. They can just switch to another screen or they can switch to another account. Like they are, programmed to not care about you. So the job and the responsibility is for us to care about them, right? And create an environment and space where they want to stay, where they feel, empowered, where they are encouraged to grow.
What are some practical ways that we do that?
It's taking the time to get to know them. So read all the Gen Z literature and research and educate yourself to know like this is their perspective. And then make the change in your heart, make the change in your mind and your approach to better understand Gen Zers and how to work with them, right? And you don't necessarily, I mean, I've been teased about how I use punctuation and how I use proper grammar and like, they just don't, but here's the deal. I'm not bothered by that. In fact, I challenge them to step it up. You know what I mean? I'm not correcting every little thing, but it's not bothering me. You know what I mean? I just have adjusted my expectations. Oh, I think that's the thing. You adjust your expectations to understand them. And then you can be in a relationship with them. Then you can understand them. Then you can communicate. And I always do it I don't come down to my level, to their level. I'm sorry. I don't come down to their level. If they're not using proper grammars or punctuations at all, it doesn't bother me. But I will use it just to model it for them. This is what it looks like to be a professional. I mean, so you need to be in a relationship with them. You need to model what it looks like to be a professional. You need to do the work and change your.
What's a practical measure that a workplace can implement to reduce anxiety, support mental health of everybody?
Yeah. I think that the American Psychological Association and a bunch of literature in psychology demonstrates and says that adolescence is extended. And so they might be 22 years old, but as far as their development is concerned, they're still adolescents at 22 years old. They might even be adolescents up until 30. And some people say that like 30 is when you start to become an adult. Having that category and having that understanding helps you to understand that like even though you're looking at a 22-year-old who looks like an adult, developmentally they might not be there yet. And so to find the appropriate developmental technique or pedagogy or perspective helps you to better interact with that individual. All right. So yeah, in the eyes of the law, they're an adult, 100%. Developmentally, not yet an adult. And so you take that perspective into that conversation, and it's a little easier to understand and deal with, talk to them. You're talking to a teenager in some respects. And remember, we also had this conversation. So like developmentally, they're not as mature, but in many ways, they've been dealing with adult themes and adult things in their lives at a younger age when cognitively and developmentally, they weren't prepared or ready to have those conversations. So there's a lot of confusion there, and there's a little bit more growing up that they need to do. And so you're not getting a full grown adult at 22. You're just not, you may not even be getting a full grown adult at 25. Back to the conversation with Bailey, you hear her process through some of these things, like she'll process through a thing, like, and I think, wow, that's, she's in her mid 20s and she hasn't yet processed through that. But like, that's the entire generation. And so I think that perspective really helps us.
So let's shift our focus towards our Gen Z audience.
Yeah.
What role does self-leadership play in overcoming these challenges in the workplace, and how can Gen Z workers cultivate that into success?
Yeah. Self-leadership starts here. Self-leadership is in the name. It starts with yourself. And it seems small, like getting out of bed or making your bed or packing your lunch or just staying on top of your finances. Here's the deal. You will not have an organization trust you with their finances if you can't handle your own. You're not going to have an organization trust you with bigger leadership things if you can't necessarily exercise and express it in your own self. Like if you can't get out of bed to get to work, I'm not giving you more responsibility than that. I have to be calling you to wake up and get out of bed to come to the which, I've done many times. And it starts there. It starts small. It's a very small fence to jump over. And so the more you're able to do that, and it's the self-efficacy of the thing. As you experience successes, you're able then to create and challenge yourself to do greater things, right? So start with the small things, start with self-leadership and get out of bed and get to work, and then we'll go from there.
Can you share some practical steps or habits that Gen Z employees can adopt to develop emotional resilience and professional accountability?
And there are so many apps on your phone to help you with your mental illness, help you to meditate, and help you to center. Your phone also can be your calendar. I use my calendar. Actually, on your phone, you need to silence notifications. You need to just turn off notifications. And so don't have your phone rule you. I don't have notifications turned on many things. I turn it off. I don't have a single game on my phone. Like if I need a game, I put it on my iPad because I'm not carrying that. I have different apps on my iPad and I use it for productivity. I also use it for leisure and for fun. Protect your phone. Turn off notifications. Get rid of apps. Use the reminders, use the memos, use the voice memos, use the calendar feature. Write down things in your notes. Like I have in my reminders a shopping list, and I don't write it out. I put it in my reminders because when you click it, it disappears. I know that I have it. And then at the end of my shopping thing, I know what else I need to get. So I go to somewhere else to get it. You know what I'm saying? Like we have this thing people argue will cause anxiety, but I will also argue the other side of it. This thing can help you combat anxiety. Turn off the notifications, get rid of apps, use it to be more productive.
Yeah, I could probably learn a lot from that. I've got way too many notifications in my life.
Yeah, man.
And I know that even just spending time doing this, I've got text messages. I think I even got a call during this episode. And you're right, these things just push at us. And so that self-leadership is important.
I don't sleep with my phone. My phone sleeps in the other room.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It's not next to me. I take my watch off. I used to sleep with it. It used to be right next to me. I don't go to bed looking at a screen. Self-leadership. It's little things. So the thing that causes so much anxiety can also be the thing that helps us, relax and chill out a little bit.
What changes do you believe that employers need to implement to better support Gen Z, especially in terms of mentorship, skill development, and mental health?
I think the first thing you need to do is you need to hire rising tide leadership to help you to understand your leadership practice, help you to develop
Absolutely.
some programs to better equip you to work with Gen Zers. You need to hire us, we can help you process um, through your perspective on Gen Z. You can take a look at your handbooks, you can look at your playbooks and, does it make sense to somebody that's a Gen Z? Crazy enough, you need a Gen Z perspective in order to understand that. And so to develop the security in your personality, to listen to somebody younger than you and to learn from somebody younger than you, that's a skill that like a lot of older leaders just don't have, because they think that you need to step up and you need to be like me. And that's just not the reality. There's a lot of things that we can do, and learning. And it's what we talked about before in many previous episodes. It's humility and vulnerability that helps you become better leaders. And if you can have the ability to listen and learn from a Gen Zer, they can teach you a ton and make you a better leader.
As you know, we always end with final thoughts here on the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. What final advice would you offer to Gen Z workers who are striving to navigate all of these new challenges so that they can succeed in their careers?
You have the responsibility as Gen Zers to lead, earn the right to be heard, work really hard so that you can speak into the process and speak into leadership and help train them and develop them to be, better managers and leaders of Gen Zers. I think the responsibility is on you. You understand this world better than your bosses do. And so earn the right to be heard.
Dr. Lim, always good conversation. This is
thank you.
This is one that it's fresh, and so we're working through it. And again, we love the conversation. We love the comments. Thank you for those who speak into these conversations, whether you're in Gen Z or you're trying to work with Gen Z. We think that this could really help. We're going to
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Another leadership lesson coming up, either leadership lesson 52 or one of the top 50 that we haven't got through yet. So
yes, sir.
Until next time. Yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and sign up for our newsletter. It doesn't cost anything. We don't sell your information. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks a lot, Doc.
Thanks for watching the episode. If you want to follow the conversations I'm having with Dr. Mo, you could find him at Rising Tide Leadership. And you're already here, so this is my channel, and you can listen to some of the other information, some of the other insights that I give about identity formation and working with the next generation of leaders. Thanks for checking it out.